Seems like anywhere you go these days, you will find technology, even in rural Utah. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the county seat. I'm Chad Booth. Today we are in Delta, Utah at the Central Utah Technology and Business Conference. Now, this is a conference about bringing technology to the rural part of the state. How important is it? Well, it's critically important to lure businesses to the areas, to improve education, and to prepare the next generation for living in an interconnected world. We will discuss the importance of technology and its impact on economic development in the show. But first, let's find out about what innovative ideas they're talking about at this conference.
A connection to the internet has become a necessity of life for many of us, as a way to connect our ideas, products, and services with people from around the globe. But that access requires infrastructure that can be challenging to install in some of the more rural areas of the state, prompting the question, what is needed to bring broadband to rural Utah? The Utah Broadband Project was established in 2011 to map available service and plan for future expansion. The goal of expanding the availability of broadband internet service is to create a level playing field for communities and businesses across the state. A recent conference in Delta, Utah brought together people from government, private industry, and education to discuss expanding the state's broadband potential. The focus was identifying the opportunities and hurdles associated with connecting rural communities with high-speed internet. One of the perks of rural living is less people and more open space. In the past, that has limited opportunities for many of these communities, but a high-speed connection to the internet can offer the best of both worlds. People can more easily reach out to consumers from all over the world without having them move in next door. The road to get there will take some time because of the associated costs of reaching a sparse population with great distances in between. This conference was one of many discussions working towards a connected rural Utah. Economic development is at the center of this discussion, along with many other discussions about how to bring new business and opportunities into the county.
Entrepreneurship and building wealth in the community is probably the best way to ensure success for your residents. Both internally, when people want to stay and invest locally, that's very important. But also, if there's investors from outside the area, again, building that wealth and sustainability, that's why counties get involved and do everything they can to try and set that foundation.
Economic development departments are basically the marketing arm for counties to bring in new opportunities. These are the people who find out ways to attract new business and industry to an area by finding good fits for the community and making sure that the infrastructure exists for the new players to come in. It could be through a broadband conference, bringing people together to discuss challenges to natural resource extraction, or the potentials of renewable energy.
I think the great thing about these events is it helps people realize what's available in their own county. It helps especially the young students see that there's a lot of opportunity that they might not normally think of. We've been trying to get the local communities to highlight their greatest industries that they have. Whatever their greatest local asset is, whether that's tourism, agriculture, natural resources, to use that, develop that to their greatest advantage.
The weather is changing for rural communities as a new mindset is taking hold, proactively approaching challenges and bringing people together to find solutions. For the county seat, I'm Derek Dowsett.
Well, there you have the overview of what we're talking about today. We will dive into the specifics when we come back on the county seat. Stay with us.
There are a couple great things about the Uinta Basin. One is it's still small, it's community.
It makes you feel like when you go somewhere, you know everybody.
Well, you know your neighbor knows you, and you can trust each other. People look out for one another.
I grew up in the Uinta Basin, and I think that it's a good place to raise a family.
So we packed up our 3 kids, and here we came to Uinta County, and what a great place it was.
It's not too big, it's not too small.
And it has a lot to offer that you just don't get in the big city anymore.
Carbon County is typically known for its industry and coal production. But did you know Utah's Castle Country has something for everyone? Visit the Carbon County Fairgrounds for exciting activities and events year-long. The Carbon County Event Center is a state-of-the-art convention center for conferences, meetings, trade shows, and more. Fly your RC plane or helicopter at the model airport. 3 large arenas and 4 ball fields invite competitions and events of all kinds. Visit castlecountry.com for more info.
Believe it or not, summer isn't far away, and neither is Juab County. There's no need to travel far to find the perfect family adventure. Boating Yuba Reservoir, exploring Mount Nebo, riding Little Sahara. Save your gas this summer and stay in your own backyard. Juab County. It'll change your family forever.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are about to get into the details, because they always say the devil is there, on the issue of broadband and education and economic development in rural Utah. Joining us for our conversation today is Kelly Cole, who is the manager of the Utah Broadband Project out of the governor's office. Kelly, thank you for being with us. Russ Cowley, who is the executive director of the 6 County Association of Governments. And we have Kevin Shanley, who is the manager of the Utah State University Distance Education Program. And does that mean that the students go the distance, or?
The students do go the distance.
Or they come from the distance?
It's from the distance. It's mostly all the students outside of Logan, outside of the main campus in Logan, Utah.
Well, I want to start with kind of an overview. And Kelly, I think this question would go to you. You know, it would seem on the surface that broadband development is at best a private industry concern, or at least, or at most, a county level concern. What's the state's interest in being involved in all this?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, the state has been really involved. We realize that it's critically important for students particularly to be able to take distance education classes in all parts of the state. We want students to be able to take college level courses where they live. The infrastructure is critically important to economic development. It's critically important to a lot of the goals that the governor has for the state. And so we have taken the role of supporting private industry, of working with them, figuring out what the barriers are to deployment across the state, and coming up with solutions that work.
It is kind of an outgrowth. I mean, Governor Leavitt was big on having, you know, internet-based education, and worked us down at Western Governors University. Is this kind of like the next level beyond that, or?
Yeah, so what we've done is we work with over 50 internet providers in the state. We collect information on where they have service, and then we're able to pinpoint areas of the state that lack service. So then we can sit down and have conversations with the AOGs, with the counties, and with the providers to figure out why do you not have service in this area? How can we help that? Are there ways to work together with the local community to make that happen?
Kelly, I think that's really important because initially, a few years ago, the Utah Education Network got broadband throughout the state to a bunch of centers, and we were able to have education at specific centers throughout the state. But now that we're getting broadband to the homes, students don't have to travel even to the centers.
Right.
And the centers can become other hubs for other activities, social gatherings and tutoring and that sort of stuff, where they can take their education in the home. So broadband to the home, I think, is really important.
That actually raises a good question, because I've often wondered, can you, in this day and age, can you totally educate online? Is it possible to actually go from kindergarten through college online?
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of K through 12 online schools, and we do have full degrees through the university online, and graduate degrees as well. So a person could connect from a rural location and do a full breadth of education.
Russ, how does the Association of Governments play into getting infrastructure built? I mean, you know, you guys aren't really heavily funded. How do you play the role in all of this?
Well, I appreciate that opportunity to answer that question. And Kelly, I commend the Governor's Office of Economic Development and the Governor. This is a project that they're working on that in fact impacts the whole state. And they could have set up in their offices in Salt Lake and dictated how the broadband project and plans for our state would come about. but instead they chose to go through the Association of Governments and get a local perspective. And so through that local perspective, they are able to work with the education, we're able to work with our local officials, and we're able to bring that information back to the state, and the state can sit down then and work with their statewide plan, which basically identifies the infrastructure that is needed to serve the whole state, and not just the Wasatch Front, not just St. George area, but it impacts the whole state. And so we're very excited to be involved with that and to help them identify the needs of our region.
Okay, you know, it always comes down to the money. I mean, that's what makes the world go round, particularly in a free enterprise society. So the state now has identified who the players are in broadband. You've identified the holes. Now, how do you get the holes filled? Because somebody's got to come up with the dough. What's the game plan on that?
Yeah, well, there are several things that can be done. We realize that in private industry, there's limited dollars that you can invest in broadband. And so one of the things that we've worked really hard on, especially working with the associations of governments over the last year, is to identify best practices. What are things that can help communities get infrastructure at lower costs? So some of the practices that we're encouraging communities when they're opening up road construction projects to work with providers, because a lot of times they can put in infrastructure at a huge reduction in cost if there's an open trench, to coordinate different kinds of construction projects. We also are trying to educate communities about the Utah Education Network, because they connect the schools and libraries with higher speeds, and they're able to do that at a huge discount. And so if a provider can connect a school in a rural area or a library, they can get back sometimes as much as 90% of their costs, and it helps expand that network. There's also a lot of great things going on with UDOT right now. Our Department of Transportation, they trade access with private providers. And I think the thing that's so great about Utah is I think that we're a really great partnering state in that our private industry and our communities actually sit down and talk to each other. And we do that a lot on a state level, and we really want, through the efforts that's going on with the associations of governments, we want to have a better line of communication between the community and the broadband providers so that they can figure out what are the barriers and how do we fix it.
And Kelly, another really key point to what that question about funding is, you have to start somewhere and identify what the needs are.
Yep.
Once you get those needs identified and you get the players in place, you get the politics in place, then you can go through, and there are a lot of opportunities out there for different types of funding. And if you have the players in place that are also supportive of the ideas and projects and the infrastructure that we're working at, such as with education, there are places that we can go and find funding and find grants.
Can counties go to like the CIB, Community Impact Board, or can they go to, are there federal grants? What are some of the avenues where they can get that funding, and is any of it reimbursable as the business comes in, where as the broadband provider that gets the infrastructure will actually pay it back over time? Is that part of the game?
Yeah, and I think one thing, you asked, what's the state's role? I think that the state's role is getting that information out into the communities. And so, I mean, I work a lot with the FCC, so when there are funding opportunities, I have a huge list that I distribute, any kind of funding opportunities. One thing that we're looking at right now is the FCC is right now developing the next program that will give funding to rural communities for broadband infrastructure. And so as we get more details on how you qualify for that particular program, we've been just updating the communities, and we're hoping later next year we'll get a little bit more information. But anytime that there's any sort of broadband funding opportunities, we have a kind of a network that we can distribute that information to.
Great. This is a great place for us to take a break. We're going to take a commercial break. When we come back, we'll delve back into our conversation about broadband in rural Utah. You're watching The County Seat. This is a pretty good program. If you live in rural Utah, you got to call all your buddies in the next county, tell them to turn on the TV right now, and join us back here in just 2 minutes. We'll see you after the break.
You go through the day-to-day repeating what you did yesterday. Don't you wish you could access that piece of your life that's missing? Find the beauty, serenity, family fun, or anything else that's missing from your life in the Cedar City, Bryan Head area. Gain access to your adventure, whether it's camping, hiking, the arts, festivals, or just a getaway. Visit cedarcityayl.com for details on all the adventures that you can access in scenic southern Utah.
Color. It's something that can be seen. But have you ever wanted to reach out and touch it? Experience it. In San Juan County, Utah, color comes to life like nowhere else on earth. Color can be more than an abstract. Color can be your gateway to a new world. Visit San Juan County and explore the past, present, and future in a way that you've only dreamed of. San Juan County. Color your experience.
Along Interstate 70 and Highway 89 is an area that is rich with high mountain peaks, vast forests, lakes, streams, historical sites, and a climate that is perfect for outdoor adventures, no matter what the season. Join us in Salina, Utah for the Eyes to the Sky Balloon Festival, June 20th through the 22nd. You will be greeted by local residents with a smile and a welcoming hand. In the center of it all, Sevier County.
Kanab, base camp for your southern Utah adventures. You belong in Kanab.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our conversation today is on the topic of broadband in rural Utah, and it's part of a bigger picture of getting infrastructure out into the rural parts of the state. So I would like to continue our conversation, and we've talked about the relationship of funding, but infrastructure sometimes requires covering large distances. Is that an interface between the state and the federal government? I know when you want to put in a power line, you've got a whole right-of-way issue. Does that come into play in all of this?
You can't ever get through one of these discussions about rural Utah and not talk about public lands. But we have about 80% of our lands within the state that's public. They all have their rules and regulations about rights-of-ways, and we have to go through that process. But hopefully, we can work on existing rights-of-ways. Politically, we can get the political powers involved, and through that, I don't think there's a project we can't get through if there's a reason and a need to do so.
I would like to kind of shift to a philosophical question, because we have touched on the need for infrastructure of all kinds. You don't have enough natural gas, a factory can't build in your community. If you don't have enough electricity to run three-phase power, then you're in trouble. So. Broadband is kind of a little bit different in that way. And I guess my question is, in rural Utah, who has the greater need today? Is it business coming to the communities, or is it education?
That's a good question.
And I'm sure there are three opinions on this.
For me, I think it's definitely education, because like I said earlier, we do have connection to the schools, but people want to take classes from their homes, and we really need the broadband to the homes and to get it out there to the community so they can participate in their material, not only if they have to be at a school, but then they can go home and review and study and watch video. And so I think it's really important for education for students to be able to progress through.
And Kevin, I would agree with you in that. I just might mention that our 6th county just went through a study and talked about education and need for education. And I think that if we had the broadband in place and people understood the broadband, our students, when they graduate, they will create businesses and they will use it. And you brought, Kelly, up some interesting facts in our last segment that maybe you'd want to share with them of how many businesses actually use the internet. And I think that would be helpful.
Well, it's interesting. So we actually in Utah have the highest home broadband adoption rate in the country. So there are more homes in Utah that pay for broadband service than in any other state. We believe it's probably because we have the youngest population. But one thing that we've seen is that the percentage of rural Utah businesses that have websites is fairly low. It's only at about 30%. And I think that that represents a huge opportunity in rural Utah, especially because people are making decisions about where they're going to visit, what services they're going to buy, what they're going to do before they even arrive into town. And so I think, you know, if you are a rural Utah business and you don't have any online presence, you're missing a huge customer base that you could be profiting from.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that goes back to the educational component, that even if they're older individuals, they can benefit from learning through the distant learning program and learning how the broadband can help them in their business.
We're going to take a quick break here on the county seat. We'll come back to our conversation in just a minute. We are discussing today broadband internet and its arrival in rural Utah. And I want to start our conversation in the next segment by asking this question: how far-reaching is the goal of the Utah Broadband Project? We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Unlimited opportunity for adventure? It's all about knowing where to look. ATV adventures, rock crawling events, art festivals, and wildlife events. The opportunities are limitless. Pick your adventure in Millard County.
Why is it that environmental protection and economic development are often placed at odds with each other? Well, in Duchesne County, they have both. Here, modern industry and resource development go hand in hand with some of the most pristine wilderness in the western United States. A strong economy balanced with a lifestyle of exploration and discovery. But don't take my word for it. Go visit them. Duchesne County, close enough for business, far enough to get away.
Making sure your food is safe. It starts on the farm and continues every step of the way, all the way to your local grocery store. So when you bring home food for your family, you do so with the peace of mind that it's safe, fresh, and nutritious. Utah Department of Agriculture and Food, the guardians of Utah's food supply and sustainable agriculture. Visit ag.utah.gov for more information.
Welcome back to the county seat. We're talking today about broadband. The philosophical question: is the goal of the Utah Broadband Project to be 100%? Can the residents in Callio and Fish Springs and Dutch John all feel that they're going to be on this target list to have broadband? Is that the goal?
Yeah, the goal ideally is to make sure that, like I said, that students in all areas of the state can take classes online, that there's sufficient speeds. I think that, you know, the first step in that process obviously is figuring out where the service is, which we've done. And 5 years ago, there was no agreement on where the service was and wasn't. And so that was kind of our first step. And now that we know that, it's just picking, you know, the hardest to reach areas and figuring out what to do. Right now we're working a lot with San Juan County. We've been speaking with some of the tribal representatives down there. We've been speaking with energy companies, with broadband providers, and working on, okay, how could we get more chapter houses connected? And I think that one thing we do really well is get the right people in the room to start talking about it. And I think that that's the first step. And let's figure out how to use all of our resources to target this goal that we have.
Yeah, and I would echo from the Utah State University perspective, the part of the mission of Utah State University is to educate the state of Utah, not 50% of the state of Utah or 70% or the population centers of Utah. It's the state of Utah. So we really are looking forward to these projects to reach all of those corners and where students might be.
Well, if this plays a key role in growth for the future, you know, everybody will wonder, it's a timeline. You know, we talk about, well, as an issue, Wasatch Regional Council's biggest thing right now is how do, you know, we're in the next 20 years, we're going to fill out the Wasatch Front. There will not be able to be any more growth there. So where's the growth in the state going to go? It is Is this going to be the key to luring people out of the Wasatch Front? Is the interconnectivity through internet, or going to have to take other things like ballet and opera and all shopping malls and everything else?
Well, it's definitely a part of it. And I know in my career that I have noticed that you try to encourage a business to locate in a rural area. If they do not have those kind of infrastructures in place, it's a lot more difficult to get them to want to come to our area. But with those in place, it makes it a little more difficult for them to say no. So yes, it is a big part of the infrastructure needs of rural Utah.
What do you think the state will look like, when that last house in Callio, since that's the most distant place I can think of in the state, when that last house has broadband, how is it going to change life?
Wow, I think it'll open us up to the world. We'll have a lot more global perspective, and people will be able to connect in new ways using the social media and other tools out there. We'll be connecting in new ways we can't even fathom right now for education and business relationships and so forth.
Well, what makes it very interesting to me is that a person that wants to live in an outlying area like Callio would be able to have a business, be able to reach his clients, be able to do commerce, and still live in the place that they want to live. And I think that's what makes it really exciting.
Thoughts on that?
I agree with Russ, and I think that becoming globally competitive, I think that without the internet, if you have an internet connection in a rural area, you can sell services all over the world. You can compete with companies in China. You can have a global presence, and it opens you up to so many more possibilities. And like you said, it allows you to work and live in the area that you love. And you see pictures of Utah, and it's usually rural areas when you see the beautiful photography of Utah, and I think that a lot of people really do like living in rural Utah.
Just recently we've had some news events that have, they're public land issues, and they have created a lot of focus and a lot of attention. Last thought, is the way we share news with each other and our communication of what's actually going on in the world going to change with that broadband expansion?
I think that thing that's going down in Nevada with the public lands would have had a total different outcome if it hadn't been for the iPhones, the pictures, the opportunity to get that information out to the world in the time they did made a big difference in the outcome of how that's turning out.
I agree, it did. Thank you all for joining us. Kelly, Russ, Kevin, appreciate it very much. Thank you for watching us. Thank you for inviting us into your home on the county seat. Remember, go online and share this with your friends. Go to our website, make your comments on Facebook. We'd love to hear your reaction. We'll look for you next week on the county seat. If you like this video, then we invite you to subscribe to our channel, The County Seat. You can do that here. And we invite you to share with your friends. We also invite you to get all the latest up-to-date information by following us on our social media channels. And if all else fails, make sure that you watch The County Seat Sunday morning at 8:30 right here on ABC4 Utah.